in a second of time, 2,000 neurons are firing off consciously. So right now, your conscious mind is processing what I have to say. You might be enjoying this. You might be thinking, I look like Anderson Cooper, a little chunkier. Whatever you're thinking with your conscious mind is with 2,000 neurons every second. In the same second, your subconscious mind is processing with 4 billion neurons. So 2,000 conscious, 4 billion subconscious, like sub meaning below consciousness. Who's in control? Your subconscious mind.
Hi, and welcome. We're all faced with hard things. These days, it might be repercussions of COVID-19, or it could be something completely unrelated. And this is a conversation about what it takes on the way through. I'm here today with Vince Pacente. Vince is one of the most in-demand motivational speakers today around accelerating extraordinary results. He's worked with an incredible, and I mean incredible, list of companies, entrepreneurs, and athletes. And early in his career, he was an athlete himself, going from recreational skier to Olympic athlete in just 4 years. He became a 5-time Canadian record holder, made it to the gold medal round of the Olympics in France, and reached national record speeds of over 135 miles an hour. Now, if that wasn't enough, he now leads climbs in the Himalayas, having founded the Heroes Climb Initiative. And Vince has been married for over 20 years and has 3 beautiful children. And somehow, through all of that, has found the time to be a New York Times best-selling author with 7 books around removing obstacles to create the success you and your team want and deserve. Vince, amazing to meet you.
You too, Sterling. You make me sound like an overachiever. All I want to do is drink beer and eat bonbons.
Well, I'll tell you what, over the last 72 hours, as I've been digging into your background and research, I'm just blown away by what you've done. But we have to start here. So you're a guy that went to school for sports journalism, I think it was, or sports marketing.
Sports marketing,
and you decided to go into the Olympics. How does that happen?
Well, like anybody's life, there's these dots. If you see these dots on a piece of paper, they just don't make any sense. But if you connect the dots, they make a clear picture of what it is. And I don't know. There's got to be something that's unexplainable to not destiny, but what you're meant to do, how you're on purpose, how you're in that right place at the right time. And I remember being 14 years old, seeing the opening ceremonies on TV and absolutely captivated by those athletes marching for their countries. And I thought, that would be the coolest thing. And then I remembered I played clarinet in the band, and what do we do? When
Slightly different.
Right. Well, when something appears and you realize that if I knew then what I know now, I would have paid closer attention to the feeling or that gut reaction. But I walked away, and that walking away would appear again and again. In fact, I'd raced in luge for a couple of years, and basically, the coach said, I've already got a national team. I'm trying to get them in the top 16 in the world, and you just started 2 weeks ago. So why don't you just, go away, see what you can do. And I went away and quit. And the guy who was standing right beside me, Bob Gasper, heard the exact same message from the national team coach. He went home, quit his job, bought a luge sled, and went to Sweden to Europe to luge somewhere. And let's fast forward to the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in Calgary. I had a ticket for those opening ceremonies. I got my job in sports marketing. I was the executive director of luge for Alberta, and we're hosting the Olympic Games in Calgary. And I'm just in that sweet spot. I'm, following my career. And yes, I did quit luge and watched none other than Bob Gasper march in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And
wow.
Sterling, there's one thing that happens that in life repeatedly that I think us motivational speakers forget is we don't make decisions based on what we aspire towards. We often make decisions when we're so uncomfortable that we think something has to be different. And that's the advantage of this whole COVID crisis. I mean, we're in a lot of pain. We're having to step back. You know, the income went to, you know, in the introduction, you said most in-demand speaker. Yeah, right up until about 5 weeks ago, I was. And then all of a sudden it went poof. I mean, and just today, I got an engagement within a, you know, a $400 million company. So no, $4 billion company. So they, there's stuff coming back and they're having to respond and say, okay, we still need to get our people moving. But, you know, at the time, at those opening ceremonies, it was the discomfort that made me say, you know what, you won't know unless you try. And so that's how, in answer to your question, how at 26 did you just decide to go to the Olympic Games? It happened because of the discomfort of watching Bob Gasper march in the opening ceremonies. It happened, I'm not saying I know I would have made the luge team. I am saying I don't know. And that is how we can move forward, is to say, okay, and if you're not in discomfort, seek the discomfort. Look for it and say, okay, what's unacceptable? What needs to change? That saying by John F. Kennedy, the best time to fix a leaky roof is when the sun is shining. Well, you know, when it comes to work and the flow of money and the economy and you know, some of us you're being let go from our companies, or our income is half or a third or 1/10 what it was. You know, this is a chance to be uncomfortable and say, okay, what's up? What needs to be different?
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, I think it feels nice to think, oh, we move towards the things that we like, but we really just move away from discomfort. And if we can if we don't have it naturally, we can set up some constructs to give us discomfort. But we're all in some kind of discomfort right now, I'm willing to bet. You know, even if your job's going great, you're no longer able to go to the supermarket. Or maybe your job's been totally turned on its head. And, you know, it sounds like you've had a couple of these moments of discomfort. Is that where you've kind of found these tools and resources that you're helping businesses and companies with? Like, how have you figured out this methodology you've got?
Well, a couple ways. One of the ways is the market finds you. I just saw an image of a guy earlier today, and so I'm paint the picture for you. So I finished the Olympic Games. I did not win in the Olympic Games. Some people think I won the gold medal. No. I placed 15th in the Olympic Games. Nobody was, and I thought, you know, along the way, I was ranked 10th in the world. I thought, wait, if I win this, I could be on the speaking circuit. So I did have it in my mind that I could be a speaker, that I could take this unknown passion or this unidentified. I was like, what is it about the speaking thing that's so attractive? And so
were you doing speaking prior, or you just had this thought?
Yeah, at a Christian women's group or a Rotary or stuff like that. There was no demand for me.
Real high level stuff, huh?
Real high level. And then after the Olympic Games, I placed 15th and nobody was really calling up. But this guy that I saw earlier today, he is, with regards to the speaking industry, you picture this stadium, this auditorium. There's 2,000 professional speakers in there. I had just finished being in the Olympics a year and a half prior, so I had this athlete's mindset. And he got up on stage, and they were talking about, you know, that is this a competitive industry? And he says, no, it's not a competitive industry. There's enough for everybody, and it's not. There is no competition. And I looked around, saw 2,000 speakers going, hell yeah, there's competition. They're in this room. And so this mindset that I used in sport, you start to realize, how did you get here today? Like, how did you end up in this chair here today? And there's actually things that have worked for you, and those things might be not all that innovative to you, but to people in the outside world might go, wait, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of it that way. So if you could really take your skill set and look at the ways you got there, you can actually provide more value. In my case, it's as a speaker and an author. But if you're selling widgets, if you're starting a company, if you're working at a company, being able to add value to have the listener or the audience or the manager or the boss go, man, I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right. Will put you instead in good stead in terms of how you're going to be able to continue growing in that role. So I could go on.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's that saying, common sense is sometimes not so common, and it's easy to take what we have in our head for granted because it's in our head. And I think there's almost this assumption a lot of times that, well, if it's in our head, it must be in everybody else's head. And that's certainly not the case.
Right. So you find that too. I mean, I can't believe people don't think the same way I do. And so that's my life lesson I need to work on.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things and really big themes that came through in everything I've been reading and watching about you is resiliency and how that comes into play. And I imagine that was a big part of your participation in the Olympics and the national records that you had. It's a big part of the work you do with companies, but it's something that we can all use now. So talk a little bit about resiliency, what it means, how we get it.
Yeah. Let me back up a little bit because I just kind of had an epiphany just now that this is natural for me. And how was I able to stay resilient was a tool that I used as an athlete. And this tool is to be able to pivot off the negative thought or the negative direction and pivot onto the direction you want to head. That doesn't work until you know where you're headed. And so with regards to the sports, for example, I wanted to be ranked top 10 in the world so I would qualify for the Canadian Olympic team. So something would happen that would say, hey, why don't you come over here and and do this part-time job while you're trying to race? And the question would be, well, is that taking me closer to marching in the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games or further away? If it's further away, then I would pivot and go, thank you. That's not part of my vision. And then I would get locked in. That's the exact same way with a thought. And resiliency has everything to do with thoughts. I mean, if you are on target, on task, on the direction, you're being resilient. I mean, you're in that zone. But if you don't have any clear direction, now think of a compass. And a compass always knows where north is. That's the same thing with the human condition. If you know, not just in the cerebral sense, but you get a physical reaction from where you could end up. In this case, marching in the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games, or being able to, our new one now is a mansion by the ocean. Now, that's going to sound very materialistic. But it's my family is there. My wife has her right hand on my left shoulder. The sun is coming down from the overhead. We can see the reflection in the sliding glass doors that we're fit and trim. I can see awards for New York Times best-selling books. I can see the piece of paper and I pick it up. It's a identification from the bank that we own this mortgage free. All these different senses of the champagne, what does it taste like? The five senses. I mean, it's a whole experience attached to what north is. And when you have such a visceral experience of what north is, resiliency is to be able to say, is that taking me closer to that or further away? And whenever it's further away from a negative thought, a comment from somebody else, or the comments that are going on up here going, well, you don't have enough money, you're not tall enough, you're a female, you can't, or you're male and you can't, or you got, I mean, I do this happens to me too all the time. But the resilience is to be able to, whoop, no, that's not part of my vision, thank you. Because the conscious and the subconscious mind are having a conversation all day long. It's normally one way of what we can realize. But the subconscious mind is feeding information all the way. You got to protect you. You might remember last time this happened, or new fears that can pop up. Go through a divorce, and you know what I'm talking about. You can have all these unconscious landmines that you would go, I'm not getting in that situation. I'm not getting in any situation, and so all these kinds of subconscious truths can take us off path, and being able to stay north is the trick. So it's just that quick pivot.
Yeah. Well, open that up a little bit. So, I'm a business guy. I've got a lot of business friends, come from the business world, at least originally. And there's this real focus on strategy all the time. Like, let's figure it out. And what you're saying is, well, it's not just an intellectual exercise. You got to almost listen to your body, listen to your emotions. Is that right?
Yeah. There's something called female intuition, and women get that. So, here's a quick story. So when I was ski racing, I realized I needed money. So I went out to get sponsorship, and I found out very quickly that nobody sponsors nobody when you're nobody. So that's why at the time I went into real estate sales, and then I had it all figured out. I'd sell about, 50 or 60 houses in August. And the whole path there on trying to sell real estate to these, it was typically a couple, they would be sitting across the table from me, and they would give me what they were looking for. Okay, so we're data driven. Many males are very data driven, and we just, it needs to make sense. Okay, I know I'm making a sweeping generalization. I know I may be offending somebody out there. I'm just talking about how I'm wired. And if it makes sense, if I got the data, then I'm going to process it. So I said, what are you looking for? And they gave me data. They gave me 4-bedroom. They gave me 2-story. They gave me this location. They gave me this price range. And so with all that data, put it into the computer. And what they teach you in real estate school is to take them to the best option first, then the second one you think, and the third and the fourth and fifth, and then they'll come back to their first one because that was the first impression. They go, oh, we love that one. We showed up. Why don't we just go back to that one? And they said, that's how it works. Well, that's not how it works, because we go to the first house and they say, yeah, that's pretty good. What else you got? And then we go to the next house. It got worse and worse and worse. And they went, yeah, by the 5th house, they said, just keep driving. Don't even stop here. And it was absolutely dumbfounded. And what happened repeatedly in this when we're talking about intuition is we would go second round, maybe third round, and we'd walk into a house, and this happened every time. It was always a couple. It was always the wife going in the middle of the living room, put her hands out like this and go, this feels right, and the guy and I are looking at each other going, what's the difference? And then she'd turn around with that look on her face like, can you feel it? And we go, yes. And so when it comes to making sense versus that gut feel, that intuition, it's worth paying attention to. And I will add this, a lot of us talk about what we, this thing, this aspirational, well, it also has to cause some fear. You also have to have a bit of that anxiety attached to it, because there's a book by Stephen Pressfield. It's called The War of Art. And he's written a bunch of books, but this one is just, I just love that book because it talks about how if it scares you, it's worth paying attention to. What a great combination of something you would aspire towards and something that scares you at the same time. I mean, that is worth paying attention to. It doesn't have to be realistic. It just has to have that sensation of, what is it about that? And poke at it, be curious.
Yeah, and maybe take a half a step towards it if it's a little too scary.
Yeah, I'd say mathematics of opportunity. Yeah, open the door, look in, see what's there. There's another door, open that door, what's in here, and then it's just constantly opening doors. That's the power of stepping forward, like you say.
Yeah. Well, what about, so let's say we're going along and we're constantly coming back to that vision that we have, whether it's the house on the ocean, or it's the job, or it's the status, or whatever it might be. And then COVID-19 happens, and literally everything that we had built had fallen apart. What do you do? I mean, it's debilitating.
It is. It's an earthquake. In fact, you've referenced the book, The Ant and the Elephant, a little bit. I think that's what brought us together is this book. I brought a copy on the desk.
I do love that book.
Yeah. Oh, this book's just, it's been around since 2003. LeBron James quoted it as helping him get a national championship. I mean, in Sports Illustrated, not to me. He won't respond to my DMs. But anyway, so the what is he, some kind of king or something? Anyway, so
he's busy.
well, I think he calls himself the king. But anyway, so the Ant and the Elephant done really well. The Ant and the Elephant is a parable about how an ant, the conscious mind, and the elephant, the subconscious mind, are realizing they're not going to get to the oasis unless they are aligned. This actually sprang out of research by a guy named Dr. Lee Poulos. And when I heard him say that in a second of time, 2,000 neurons are firing off consciously. So right now, your conscious mind is processing what I have to say. You might be enjoying this. You might be thinking, I look like Anderson Cooper, a little chunkier. Whatever you're thinking with your conscious mind is with 2,000 neurons every second. In the same second, your subconscious mind is processing with 4 billion neurons. So 2,000 conscious, 4 billion subconscious, like sub meaning below consciousness. Who's in control? Your subconscious mind. So this book about an ant and the elephant is that same metaphor. The ant makes a decision to go west towards the oasis, but the elephant's headed east. Which way does the ant really end up going? East. Thinking you're going west. I got out of the shower this morning. I've been I've been exercising, I've been eating right as far as I know, and I got out of the shower and went, this isn't working. So there must be something at the subconscious level that is not working the way it's supposed to be working. And creating that alignment of the ant and the elephant, or 2,000 neurons and 4 billion neurons headed in the same direction, pretty important. And so in answer to your question, what do we do when we go through a setback? Well, that was the reason for a book you haven't seen, nobody's seen yet, because it's written and I'm pitching it to publishers in the next, well, I'm supposed to be doing it right now, but guess what happened? Anyway, so the publishers are all in New York, many of them, so in New York. But the book's called The Ant, the Elephant, and the Earthquake. And what happens when the ant and the elephant go through an earthquake? Well, the ground gets taken out from under you. And when we go through that kind of setback, that kind of disruption, we are in a position where we could very well get stuck. And in chaos, there's no linear way out of chaos. The Ant and the Elephant's a great little book because it talks about how the ant and the elephant can take these 5 steps and get to the oasis where they want to end up. But if you go through an earthquake, it doesn't work anymore. The linear path out of chaos isn't nearly impossible. You need more of a loop process to get out of that. So that's what that book does.
Yeah. Well, talk to us a little bit about it if you can, because I love that statement. No linear path out of chaos.
Yeah. So I'll give you kind of a sneak peek. The ant and the elephant go through, in this parable, they go through an earthquake and then they realize, wait, we need to get out of this. And they, over time, Brio, their teacher, who was a wise owl, that was really creative. Anyway, so I have a wise owl that teaches them the path of, I just wish there was another metaphor, but it's the owl is the smart dude in the room. So, so this whole thing where, I'll give you 2 tips within that, because I don't want to give the whole book away. I want it to kind of fresh when it launches. But 2 things that really play in is being curious about, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Does this work? But stay curious and then immediately go to creativity, meaning maybe this is the path. So this curiosity for, I'll use myself as an example. 90% of my income comes from giving motivational talks about my Olympic story. And that 10% has been in the safety world, in the safety conferences and that kind of thing. And when this whole COVID crisis happened, I went, well, wait a minute, what is it about the safety industry? So I got curious about the safety industry and started to realize more about the neuroscience of safety. Now, I've been thinking about this for 18 months. So that curiosity has been ongoing, but it's been accelerated because of the opportunities that present themselves with communicating in this kind of fashion. And, you know, the safety industry doesn't put on a lot of, I'm realizing this, that yes, they put on conferences, but they also communicate to their people in a very digital fashion. They're just looking for ways to communicate and get to this message to people that, hey, we need your very best in this setting in order for us to have a safe environment. Created a company called Radical Safety. Why radical safety? Well, the antonym to conventional is radical. And so called it Radical Safety. RadicalSafety.com is available. And so this curiosity can lead to creativity. Now, the creativity piece is how creative can you be from what you were curious about, like opening that door. Does it, well, look at, there's another door. And so as you're curious, the second step in this is to be so creative in terms of, well, maybe this is an avenue, maybe this is an avenue. And I've been spending the last 4 years poking at creative ideas under that banner of curiosity. And you're an entrepreneur, you know, you and I both know, every entrepreneur knows this, a very small percentage of the ideas we come forward with work. You know, this thing from the, remember Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. Well, those are the heroes of entrepreneurism. They built something and they created, Steve Jobs, you know, I promise you that any entrepreneurial hero had the market come to them and say, hey, do you think this could do this and this and this? They say, there you go. Yeah, I could figure that out. And so you're meeting a need rather than having this grand idea of, I know what they need. I don't think that, I haven't figured out how to make that work. It's build it and he will come or they will come. I mean, just be creative, curious and creative, and constantly be in that loop, and then it pops you out of the chaos. It pops you out of this stuckness, and then you can get on that linear path to where you want to go. But right now, the only way out of this chaos right now is to be curious and creative, curious and creative, curious and creative, and you will find your way out of it. Some of us, it will pop out quite easily. And some of us may take years to do that because it's just, that's life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think part of it has to do with the speed at which you're willing to get curious and try some of those new things. If you're willing to get up every day and try something new, see where you can add value, see where you can adjust, well, great. You might get there faster than somebody that takes a month to try something new, and then another month to try something else. And so there's something back to your resilience there where you just keep coming back to it, but how fast can you come back to it?
Right, right. Seth Godin, one of my favorite authors, wrote a book on quitting, and he says, it's okay to quit. Well,
yeah.
His books are so profound because it's just one simple concept. They're very thin books, and they just hit it home over and over and over again. I mean, honestly, some of his books could be a paragraph, because, but he's able to
get them down to a tweet.
Well, he's just such a great author because he clarifies something that's so true, the universal truth. So, so, it's okay to quit. It's knowing when to quit and just saying, well, wait a minute, maybe there's an adaptation of what I'm doing that could be a little better. My wife has started something called Global Leaders Organization. She started this, 4 or 5 years ago. And it wasn't that, it was something else altogether. But as an entrepreneur, she had this idea of a leader-to-leader exchange of ideas and concepts. It would be a digital platform. But now it's so much more with a deal flow piece to it, with the Jobs Act that came about 3-4 years ago, people being able to invest in SEC regulated investments, and all that couldn't have been conceptualized at the beginning. It was conceptualized over putting these pieces together. A classic example is Fred Smith with his college paper where he got a C on FedEx, right? Well, he probably got a C, and I promise you, I bet he got a C. I'm guessing he got a C because it wasn't until he got into the idea he went, oh, well, wait a minute, this is the reality. Or he brought in some very smart people who said, no, our supply chain management can be this and this, and we could do we have hubs in here and here. And so it came together over time, and he probably drove that home, and not overnight, not being able to pull it together and say, okay, this could work.
Well, and it sounds like that's exactly the reason when we go through that process, we come out better, faster, stronger. Because I know you talk a lot about that, right?
Yeah.
It's not just coming back better.
Yeah. Well, that's a byproduct of just getting your knees skinned and well, that didn't work, and just shrugging it off, not taking it personally, resilience. And, you know, I in 2008 was about the exact same time I was making a real big bet, like $1 million. I was taking everything I owned. I was putting it into a concept, a book that ended up being on the New York Times best-selling list, The Age of Speed. And when 2008 rolled around, I was launching the book, and it got on the list right away. And then the economy just cratered, and people weren't thinking about going faster. They were thinking about surviving. And man, you can put all the right pieces together and get hurt. And I will say, from a vulnerable standpoint, I really wondered if I'd lost it, if I lost my ability to be resilient, lost my ability to be an entrepreneur, lost my ability to be a good author, be relevant. There was, you know, a slow, what was it called? The torture where the drip is on the forehead over and over. That's, I forget what the term is, but anyways, it was a slow torture to have that constant drip of, well, maybe I've lost it. And then, you know, you can be stuck. You can be in chaos and not know your way out. And curious and then creative, you know, you can keep doing those two things, and eventually something will click, something will pop you out. Yeah.
And is that where you found yourself in 2008? Oh, yeah. Just kind of saying.
It took years. Yeah. It took years. I was still speaking, you know, at the time my fee was, I made as much in an hour at that time in 2008 as I made in an entire year when I was the executive director for Luge. Right. And that just kind of got annihilated. And I'm not back up to those levels fee wise. I charge a ton of money for one keynote, but not doing that either. So here we go again, you know, and that's okay. Right now I've got 3 college age kids, right? They're all in college right now. Do you have kids?
I don't.
You don't. Okay. So if you do, and they hit college age, put your seatbelt on, man, because these colleges think very, very highly of their tuition fees. And it is insane. The financial pressure and all that. And now they're not in college. I get to pay the colleges still, but they're all here drinking all my beer.
Going to class in their room, right?
Right. But we're having such a great time hanging together. We're enjoying each other's company, and it's. I keep asking, are you enjoying this as much as I am? Because this is really fun to just be together and connect with you, and all realizing that this will pass, in the bad way, of course. But this wonderful opportunity for us to connect will pass, and we may ever get that chance to be together like we are right now. So it really is a privilege and a treasured time that we're experiencing at the exact same time as scrambling for how are we going to make some money.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've been really moved by a lot of not just family connections, but community connections and people coming together, not physically, but virtually, closer and better and stronger than really ever before. But one of the, I don't know how to say this exactly. one of the things we deal with is exactly what you're pointing to, right? Is the fear is, oh, it's great to be with my family, but I'm making no income. And you say fear less, but it's one thing to understand it. How do you actually embody less fear?
Yeah. We keep thinking that in the spirit of commitment, are you in or you're out, right? Well, commitment's not episodic. You don't have this moment where you're in. You don't have a moment where you're fearless. You have the process of fearlessness. To fear less is to be in the process of consistently going, well, is that taking me closer to where we want to go or further away? So the fear is natural. The procrastination is natural in the world of commitment. Yet there's times where you kind of go, well, wait a minute, does this have an emotional buzz to do this? In the spirit of that, I went to a professor back when I was in college, and I just wanted to get out of there. All I wanted to do was get out of university. I was just so tired of the academia and all that. And I went to a professor and I said, I'm procrastinating. What advice would you have? You've seen thousands of students. Like, how do students stop procrastinating? He looked at me and went, oh, well, you just stop. You stop procrastinating. You just do it. I went, yeah, no, I get that one. I understand that one. What I'm asking is, what's the hack? What's the ability to stop procrastinating? And looking back, the answer was, looking back now, the answer was to, where do you want to head? What do you want to accomplish? And the truth be known, in that conversation, I said, well, I just want to get out of here. He says, well, there's no emotional quotient to that. There's no emotional buzz to that. What could you do that would be positive? So here's what I learned later on. After the Olympic Games, I was thinking, wait, I could still kind of maybe give a speech. I didn't win in the Olympics, but the phone wasn't ringing. How did you place 15th in the Olympic Games? But a realtor pulled me aside and he said, hey, if you want to really prove that this formula of yours worked, then why don't you prove it in real estate? And I went, yeah. So I went automatic from that moment where I really was not enjoying selling real estate. I just wasn't. There were people in the room, in the office, who just weren't that bright, right? And they were doing so great. When you looked at why, they loved it. They loved selling real estate. And I went, well, what do I love about real estate? And I started to identify the pieces of what was enticing about it. And the price of not doing this, of not proving that my formula worked in real estate, I went, you know what, he's right. And so I then focused on what was right, and then became an award-winning realtor. Not because I loved it, but there were elements of it, of serving people. And then I just eliminated everything that sucked the energy out of me. So I stopped working weekends. I stopped advertising. I stopped doing open houses. And what I would do is, well, I would be more smart about how I competed. See, there's a saying in the Olympic Games, Citius Altius Fortius, which is swifter, higher, stronger. Well, I added a fourth one, which was Smartius. How much smarter could you compete? And in real estate at that time, what I was doing was I was doing the open houses, but only for realtors. And I have this great lasagna recipe, and I would do the lasagna at my open houses. Do you know how many freaking realtors, you know how many clients each of those realtors have? And so all of a sudden I'm getting this attention on that, and not working weekends. Well, there were realtors coming up through the ranks, and I would say, hey, you want to do an open house? You can pick up some buyers that way. And so they would do the open houses for me. The client would still get the open houses that they wanted, and not working weekends. I didn't want to work weekends at the time. My dad was ill from cancer, and I would go up to Edmonton and visit them while some other realtors were handling my open houses and that over the weekend. And so if you're smarter and on purpose and doing what gives you an emotional buzz, you can actually stay the course, whether it's from procrastination to actually self-hate. doing things that are like drinking too much or smoking too much or eating too much. This stuff that we can do to say, well, is that taking me closer to that emotional buzz or further away? And if you don't have an emotional buzz, figure it out. What's that thing that you aspire towards and that causes some anxiety at the same time? You really do that. You'll set that compass on north for you and just keep pivoting back on that.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to that curiosity piece of you just kind of keep kind of poking around to see where you start to resonate. And I love that idea of getting rid of the things that don't give you a buzz. Because in real estate, the little I know about it, I think marketing and open houses are two of the really big things that probably entering into the space, they'd be like, oh, you definitely have to do that. Well, it turns out you don't have to do anything. But you could still be successful if you're following that compass.
Right. Yeah, that buzz that you're talking about is a litmus test for 2,000 neurons and 4 billion neurons headed in the same direction. If 2,000 neurons and 4 billion neurons have the same intention, same agenda, so this mansion by the ocean, that's a conscious thing. Well, the subconscious mind might be going, well, wait a minute, you don't have the money right now. You're not making money right now and all that. And it's like, no. What would it feel like to have that as a reality with the family there? And then 4 billion neurons start to go in the same direction. Then you're not as in much as effort mode as more attraction mode. I think there's books like The Secret. It did us a disservice in a way because it's just all you have to do is think positively. Well, no. It's more about being the architect of your truth, being the architect of that end result that has the emotional quotient attached to it, and the 5 senses of what it looks like, smells like, tastes like, touches. It's an experience with an emotion attached to it. Oh my gosh, it just becomes so much easier of a path to get to where you want to go. And right now in COVID, the COVID fear and all that kind of stuff, wait a minute, I'm having fear. This is how we started talking about this. Wait, I'm in pain right now. I'm staring at the ceiling. Where's the next paycheck coming from? How am I going to feed my kids? Where am I going to get diapers? These kinds of fears can supersede everything. And that's just not the way to do it.
Well, I felt it myself, also being a keynote speaker and about 80% of my revenue coming from it. It's like, what's happening? The world's changed and I need to survive now. And it really takes something to pull you back to, okay, but where are we going? And what steps can I take? What action can I take now? Because I think you pointed to it earlier, that action of doing something. It doesn't matter if it's the exact right thing or looks perfect, but it's just saying, okay, what is that half step or what's that first door that I can open?
Yeah, action, anything. And you're right, just any kind of action is essential. And an awareness at the same time. It's the older I get, the more I think there's that yin and yang symbol is pretty profound, because you set a goal, you're tactical, you're strategic, you drive towards that, you can be curious, open those doors and do that. At the exact same time, it's about letting go. It's about stepping back. At the exact same time, it's about thinking, checking in. Well, is this the right thing? Not doing anything. It's being a human being versus a human doing. I mean, we're both, right? We're really both. Yeah. We're human doings and we're human beings. And so that being thing is part of it. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm going to keep writing about it till I do. Might just expire before I figure it out, but that's okay. We're gonna have fun along the way.
It's one of those mountains with no top.
Right.
You just keep climbing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I've got to ask, so the kind of compass direction where you're headed makes a ton of sense to me, but a lot of us are with our families or trying to work with teams remotely. And how do you line up everybody's neurons so you go in the right direction? I get myself, but if you've got teams or people you're trying to work with or families you're trying to lead, right. What are your thoughts on that? Because I imagine it's the same inside of companies.
Yeah. Well, any kind of internal communication that we just talked about, the same dynamic happens externally. And, to talk to people or talk at people about, here's what we do. If you're in a leadership role and you've got employees, starting the conversation with, how do you feel? How many leaders do that? What does that feel like? Where are you at? How are your kids? Knowing that you care is that's so cliche, but I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of doing out there. I'm seeing a lot of caring. I'm seeing a lot of leaders going, yeah, they're stepping out. I just got off the phone. This is maybe I don't even lost count. I think my 5th or 6th Zoom call today, and he's leading a massive company, and his division is a $200 million division of a $4 billion company. And he said the best thing he's done in the last few weeks is just had these little 8-person focus groups of reaching out to them and asking them how they feel. Where are you at? What kinds of things are you noticing? Because he has the humility to go, I don't have all the answers, but I can listen and I can understand where you're at. And it's made a huge, huge difference. And that's why, I think half the country right now is having pushback from a leader who's just saying, no, I've got good intuition. I got this, I can handle this. I've got, here's where we're going to go. And I don't know if that's listening. And then the other half of the country said, no, he's taking control. He's, you know who we're talking about. Anyway, so this whole thing, it's people want to be listened to, and they want to have their hand held at the same time. So we don't need to go there. I really find that the leaders that really resonate with people are paying attention, and that's just common sense. But I think you even said it earlier, it's not so common. So
it's not, and I'll tell you, I didn't even think twice about it until you just said it. But I was on a board call for a company I'm on the board of the other day, and the guy that led it, the CEO, said, there's tons of things going on with the business. We're going to get to that, but the purpose of today's board call is just to share with what we're dealing with, what's happening for you. And my first thought was, well, wait a second, there's so much to do. And my second thought was, wow, that's really amazing. To hear that some people are doing really amazingly well, and, they pivoted and they figure things out and they've gotten themselves out of the chaos, and other people totally not that. And there was just kind of this open sharing on the call that left everybody walking away from it empowered, just to be like, yeah, there's humans behind all these things we're trying to do.
And did you notice a certain elevation in bonding, or, hey, we're in this together, from that conversation?
100%. I think somebody even said it at the end, like it feels like we're having a team meeting, even though we're not together, but you had that connectedness.
Yeah. We need to remind ourselves that we're most attracted. Well, think of the person you're most attracted to, right? And have you seen their vulnerability? Have they been entirely honest? Well, of course. And okay, think of a sale or a negotiation, or how to move this ball forward for our company. Are we trying to do it with vulnerability, or are we trying to do it with determination and drive and all that? And leading with vulnerability doesn't mean you're weak. It actually is the opposite. It's a confidence that people need to feel that I'm with somebody who really understands that we're in this together, that all these cliches keep coming, but it's such easy advice. Yet our knee-jerk reaction say, well, what do I do? How do I get there? How do I create this? It's like, oh, no.
Right.
Let's keep that yin and yang, that balance of both, needs to be there.
Yeah. Step back from it for a moment. And evaluate. I mean, early on when the crisis kicked in, I saw a lot of people like scrambling in the doing mode. And it actually took a couple of weeks for a lot of the folks I know, those that have done it, to step back into the human being piece a little bit, to say, okay, let's assess this. We don't necessarily need to be in survival. We don't know when the end of this thing is coming necessarily. We're still in this chaos, but we can step ourselves out of it for a second to take a look at, well, what's going to come next? Yeah. So Vince, this is amazing. I so appreciate your time and your insight, and I can't wait to hear everybody's feedback around it. Where can people find you, get your books, all that stuff?
Come to my website, vinceposenti.com, and there's lots of videos. I've heard binge watching of Vince, which is funny to me. You can go on YouTube and see a bunch of videos. I've got something I'm really excited about. It's called Elephant Power, and I took the elephant and I deconstructed it as if I was to coach you through almost every single chapter, and here's how to apply it, here's how to put it into your life. And so there's a button on my website called Coaching. If you go in there, it's a mobile coaching product called Elephant Power. And I last night priced it at $14.97 a month, $14.97, and not $1,400. No, $14.97. And the point behind it is we can all kind of contribute. And I've learned if you give somebody something for free, they don't take it seriously. So you put some skin in the game, you'll get, I think it's something that's absolutely life-changing, because it got me to the Olympic Games. The exact same formula got me in the Speaker Hall of Fame. The exact same formula that got me in the New York Times best-selling, and got me to the top of mountains in the Himalayas, where we named mountains after everyday heroes, and we got back down safely from the exact same formula. This Elephant Power thing is life-changing, and not everybody's going to do it. Not everybody. I guess there's a subconscious agenda where we have an unconscious truth that's going to hold us back. So that's okay. Hopefully you got something from this interview. Maybe it's just reading the book that helps you open that next door, or maybe it's something you heard over this conversation or in future podcasts that you put forward through this, Sterling. So you're doing great work. For us to be able to broadcast this will make a massive difference, one viewer at a time, I think.
Yeah, well put. Well, I couldn't recommend your book and the Elephant Power. Tell me, it's a series of workshops? It's $14.97 period? It's for a couple of months? Just want to make sure we're clear.
I'm just, you go at your own pace. I mean, you could knock it out in 1 month, $14.97, and you're done. Then you just cancel the subscription. But if it takes you longer, then it takes you longer. And it's a month-to-month thing. It's up to you. I mean, we're all on different paths. And I used to think everybody thought like me, that they would knock it out in a month. And not everybody is. And I went, okay, I get it. Okay. So here, it's available to you. It's a mobile learning thing. You see the entire thing on your cell phone if you want, and stay the course that way.
Fantastic. All right. Well, everybody check that out. Let me know, let Vince know what you think of it. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the other side.